Hello, my loves. Welcome to another episode of the With Love from Liv podcast. Of course, my name is Liv, and I love that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am excited that it's getting to be a little bit cooler. I'm in St. George, and it's actually still pretty warm here, but I just turn up the air conditioner and put some sweaters on and pretend, because that's who I am. And with the changing of the seasons, this is a time that personally I love, and I like to actually go through and kind of clean out my life. And so this looks like going through my clothes, going through old mindsets, beliefs, whatever I feel like I can shed, kind of like with the changing of the leaves, and let go and let something else cultivate and then blossom over time. So with that, I have been thinking a lot about how to better serve you and to help bring more love and, of course, all of that into your life. And one thing that I have been told for honestly years now is to create like an official commentary on The Bachelor. And I've been really hesitant to do this, honestly, because I don't watch The Bachelor that much. And because I think that the show, like, yes, I know it's fake, but I think that even though we're all kind of like, oh yeah, it's fake, it still does kind of plant these seeds in singles' minds of, well, you know, if only I could have a love like The Bachelor, if I could only have a love story that plays out like that, right? And so because of that, because I know that there is this attention and just kind of, you know, people are drawn to dating shows, I, for the first time in years, watched the most recent season, and I actually am going to do a little commentary on it. And honestly, if you don't care about The Bachelor, if you don't watch it, this episode is still going to be really valuable to you, because I am going to talk about relationship skills and actually what we can learn from this most recent season of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. So on the one hand, I think that there is going to be a lot that I missed, obviously, from the season before, because this season, there were two bachelorettes. They were friends. They were both contestants on the last season, and they both got dumped, right? And so the producers, who, by the way, I think are such douchebags, like the producers of reality TV shows, and especially of The Bachelor, I think have just gotten really vicious with people's emotions, and are really, really exploiting it on these shows, which is part of why I don't watch them. But for this season specifically, I thought that it was especially unkind to like have these two girls essentially compete with each other. And they kind of set up these like ground rules in the beginning of, you know, what are they looking for, and what if they like the same guy, and like all of that. But they bring on one girl who is like pretty confident. She's younger, I think, but she came across as very confident. This is Gabby, and she's just kind of like full of life and fun. And then they have this other girl, Rachel, who is a beautiful girl. They're both beautiful. And she is very deeply, obviously, insecure. And her mantra, kind of what I picked up throughout the season, was, what if no one picks me? Right? And while I didn't like that they kind of pit these two girls against each other, I did think that it was a really interesting dynamic to watch play out, because a lot of us can relate either to one or the other, or sometimes both, depending on where you're at in your dating journey. And it can be easy on the one hand to see people who are, just, they seem like they've got dating figured out. And it seems like everybody wants to date them. And it seems like they're always, passing over you for this other person. And you can feel frustrated by that. You can feel insecure by that. There can be all kinds of those emotions that we saw in Rachel, where guys were absolutely ditching her for Gabby, and they were not really that drawn to her, not really that connected to her. They kept bailing on her, and they were more so drawn to Gabby, especially kind of in the beginning before they like separated each other, which I thought was a smart move. But then it was like, well, then what's the point of doing that in the first place? However, when they are in this space of essentially competing with each other, I think that the reason why Gabby ended up, number one, actually getting engaged to the guy that she liked, and she liked him since the beginning. She picked Eric, who I felt was a good match for her, even from the first episode. I kind of placed those two together, and Rachel ends up alone, right? She like runs off with a guy that she had previously rejected at the like last episode, whatever. And I just think that their dynamic was so pertinent to how singles are approaching dating. Because if you're kind of over here like Rachel, and you can relate to that feeling of nobody ever picks me, maybe you are still single and you're in your 30s. That can be frustrating because you can feel like, well, I've tried and nobody wants me. So here I am, and that just sucks for me, right? Or you are divorced, and that can feel like, well, somebody picked me and then took it back, or, whatever. But I see and I hear so much from singles that their biggest issue or their biggest hurdle to being in a relationship is that they just can't meet anybody. And that's kind of the story that they tell themselves. Well, if I could just meet the right person, then I wouldn't be alone anymore. I would be able to be in the relationship. I would have everything I want. But since I can't meet them, I don't have any of those things, right? And The Bachelor, and especially this season, are such perfect evidences of why that's not true. Because Rachel had all of these guys who were, from different backgrounds, different spaces, like whatever, all these different guys that she could have connected with, and she ended up with no one. And the show was about her, right? Like, she was the Bachelor. And so if she can come onto this show and end up with none of the guys, that tells me, because this isn't unique to her, okay? I'm not just trying to slam this girl. This is just something that I've noticed consistently throughout The Bachelor and through reality dating shows, is that these people come onto it, and let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, let's say they're actually there for love instead of fame. Okay, just bear with me. And they think, well, if I have this pool that they're there for me, they're there to date me, I will end up with one of them, right? That's my only issue, is that I haven't met the right person. And so here's the solution. I can be on a dating show and I can meet all of these people, and then it's going to work out with one of them. And I hear that a lot. But the reality is, you could meet 10, or how many people are on The Bachelor, like 30? You could meet 30 people who are ready and interested in dating you. But if you don't have the right skills, if you don't have the proper awareness, if you don't know how to be in a relationship, then it doesn't matter if all of those people are fighting each other, crawling all over themselves to be with you. You won't be able to pick them. And we saw this with Rachel choosing, in my opinion, the worst guy that was there. And then things fell apart, right? And yeah, like it sucks that he cheated on her and it's not her fault that he did that. But she picked the wrong person because she wasn't in a good headspace to choose the right person for her. And I see this all the time. I see people who are like, well, if only I could meet someone, then I would be happy. But if you don't know what happiness feels like, how will you know what it's like within a relationship, right? Like the feeling of happiness isn't different being single versus being engaged, married, whatever. The feeling is the same, right? And it's true that in a really good, healthy, wonderful relationship, the feeling will grow and it will expand. But if you don't know the feeling, if you're unfamiliar with it, if you don't know how to cultivate it within you right now as a single, then you are going to really struggle to identify people who bring happiness with them, more or less, and who can expand it with you, right? So what are those relationship skills? What does it take to get from the place of, if only I could meet someone, it could work out, versus I have all of the relationship skills that I need. I can make it work with literally anyone that I choose. And so it's just a matter of when do I want to choose someone, right? So skill number one, this is more than relationship building, by the way, like in romantic relationships, these are skills, these are interpersonal development skills that you need to have to function in society and have healthy work relationships, have healthy friendships, have healthy family dynamics. Like you need these skills. And if you don't have them right now, then I'm going to guess friendships are difficult for you to maintain. Workspaces feel very toxic and you struggle with dating, right? So here's what they are. Number one is awareness. Personal awareness is like, oh my gosh, it's like the most key thing to be able to have healthy dynamics. And this is more than like, oh, I know who I am and I'm confident. This is awareness around what are your triggers? Okay, what was your childhood like? Can you own and accept that whether you had a good childhood or a bad childhood, there are things that hurt you that you project as an adult that you can heal and that you can work on, right? Do you know who you are? Do you know who you want to be? Do you know what beliefs and stories and misunderstandings exist within your own mind that prevent you from being and having everything that you want, right? Awareness is something that specifically I see a lot in the singles that I work with who are LDS, who grew up in a loving home where their parents are still married, and they feel like that's such an anomaly. And in a lot of cases, it's true, it is. But because they have parents who love each other and they grew up in like a good, wholesome Christian kind of upbringing, then they don't have any issues. They don't have any baggage. They don't have anything that they need to work on or work through. They don't need therapy, like whatever. And that's absolutely just not true. You could have the best childhood that ever existed, and you will still have misunderstood things. You will still have had imperfect parents, no matter how loving or wonderful they were. There will always be things that you need to create awareness around and move through that are going to be impacting your adult life and your goals and like all of that. So if you are in denial and you say, nope, I had a good childhood, I had a good upbringing, so I'm good, I don't need to like dig in and nurture any wounds or raise awareness, that's just what it is. It's denial. Okay. And there is always like, look at when you get really upset by things, when you get really reactive about things, when you're like so mad or just sobbing, or you're having really, really strong emotional, visceral reaction. And you're like, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know what set me off. I don't know, like I'm just feeling so strongly, and how do I cope with it? Well, that's something inside that needs to be seen, that is basically calling out for you and wants to be worked on, wants to be seen, wants to be accepted, wants to be loved. So number one, awareness. Make sure that you are doing something, okay? It doesn't have to be therapy, although if you've never been, it's a great thing to check out. Coaching, I think, is amazing. Coaching programs. There are all kinds of options for you to do the internal work, but do something, okay? There's things underneath the surface for everyone. If you're a human, there are things underneath the surface, and there are things that you can embrace and accept and love. And when you do, that is going to play out much better in your relationships. So number two is conflict resolution. This is something I talk about a lot because number one, I did not used to have any kind of conflict resolution skills. By absolute divine intervention, when I moved to Washington, D.C., I had a roommate, total stranger, super, super sweet girl who had just like so much love in her heart. She was studying conflict resolution. Like she had, I think, 1 or 2 degrees already. And this was just like something she was curious about and learning. And she would just come and share with me all of this stuff about conflict resolution. And there were things that I just had never really been taught. And so she and I would kind of talk about what it takes to resolve conflict in a healthy way. From kind of what I picked up is that conflict resolution in a healthy way comes in 3 parts. Okay, so part number 1 is that there's going to be a disconnect. So the conflict is the disconnect. So for the most part, whatever your disconnect is, whatever you're in conflict about, it's something underneath that. So this plays back into the awareness. But if you can get to a space where you can say, okay, there's conflict here between you and me because something inside me is butting heads with something inside you, and we're not understanding each other. And that's part number 2 is understanding. And this was something that I thought was really interesting that did play out differently with both of these bachelorettes, because with Gabby and Eric, they had conflict, right? They had spaces where they were misunderstanding each other, and they weren't quite seeing eye to eye, but they took the time to talk through those things and get on the same page, versus Rachel and Tino, who I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't actually watch all of the episodes, but if I'm remembering correctly, they didn't have any conflict through the whole season, which, by the way, is a huge, huge red flag. If there's no conflict at all between you and your partner, that is very telling to me that one of you is not being insincere, and probably both of you are not being totally sincere. But then when they did have this major conflict of him cheating on her, there was no attempt between either one of them to understand each other. Like, my observation of that whole like situation, and them having it out both at her house and then on the show, was that they were both just attempting to defend themselves. And Rachel, I felt like, was very much in this space of trying to be like, gotcha, like, how dare you, woman power, whatever. And I get it. She's hurt, she was cheated on, and that really sucks. But I didn't get the sense that either one of them actually were trying to resolve the conflict. They were more just kind of exacerbating it and then defending themselves, which is not healthy, right? And it's okay that they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to end up together. But I think that that's kind of telling of probably how they handle conflict in other situations with other people, because who you are is who you are. And so if you're in situations where you just shut down, you get defensive, you can't talk, you can't, give any kind of space for understanding or listening, then, I mean, that just kind of tells you where you are, right? So number one is disconnect. Number two is understanding. And then number three is rebuilding. So when it comes to conflict resolution, actually the most important part, in my opinion, is how you reconnect after the conflict. A lot of people get really, really focused on, well, did they apologize? Did I really feel heard? Did we actually talk it through to the end? All of that. And I think those things matter, but they don't matter as much as whether or not you're able to rebuild afterwards, right? Because maybe you didn't get 100% heard exactly the way you wanted to, but if you could be heard enough that you feel okay connecting and just kind of moving on and seeing how things can get better between you, then that's what really matters, right? Is how can you reconnect and improve in the future and not keep getting caught up in this same fight? Because what I've noticed is that a lot of conflict in relationships is actually the same conflict again and again and again, with people not moving actually beyond it. Okay. So I'm giving you a list of a lot of things, but just to recap, so we're on the same page. The first skill that you need is awareness. The second skill that you need is conflict resolution. The third skill that you need is a conviction to your values and clarity around what your values are. And this is, in my opinion, where it really works against people who get married very young, because not that can't work out, but usually when you're 18, 19, 20, even up till 25, 26, you don't know what your values are because you're getting out on your own for the first time. So you're kind of like ingrained with the values that your parents gave you. And those could be good or bad, but what matters is if they resonate with you, right? And that's a lot of, honestly, what I think is fun about being an adult, leaving home, going out on your own, is getting to understand, okay, here's how I've always understood the world, because this is the upbringing that, the lens of the upbringing that I had. Do I really feel good about that? Is that how I want to continue to see the world? What do I want to continue from my upbringing? What would I like to maybe change? Do I want to abandon all of it? Like all of that is your journey, and those are your values, and you don't have to have them figured out right away. You don't have to have them figured out at 21. You don't have to have them figured out at 25. It doesn't matter when you figure them out. You'll definitely want to do that eventually. But my point is not to get into a serious relationship, and especially do not get married until you've figured those things out. And if you figure them out really early on, then you're probably set up for a good connection, right? But if you don't, and you're hoping that a marriage will instill the values in you, that is setting yourself up for failure. Okay, so get clear on what your values are. What's your vision for your relationship long term? How do you want your life to play out? Do you want to continue to go to church? Do you want to get married in the temple? Do you want to travel? Do you want to have a lot of kids? Do you all of those things? Separate yourself from your upbringing and then root into what you want to keep, right? and decide for yourself, what feels good? What do I want to continue? What do I want to have with somebody else? What do I want my own home to look like? And then that will make it so much easier to find someone who wants the same thing. Because a lot of where I struggled with connecting with someone for many years was that I just didn't really know what I wanted my marriage to look like. Like, I just thought that it would work itself out. And spoiler alert, it doesn't. You have to work your marriage out. You have to decide the direction you want to go, and then pick someone who also wants to go in that direction. Because if you have a value conflict, that's going to result in either you guys break up because you don't want the same things, or one of you changes what you want to match the other person and be able to make your marriage work. And my personal opinion, that's self-abandonment, and that's going to lead to a lot of resentment later down the road. So get convicted. What you want is what you want. Okay. You get to own that. You get to decide that. And then you get to find somebody who shares that and wants that. And that doesn't mean that you won't grow over time, but typically once you get married, your values, if they're changing, then that's a huge red flag to me. So convict yourself to your values, decide what they are, ask for other people, go like experience life however that feels good to you. For me, it meant a lot of traveling. I lived in a lot of different states, and I just wanted to experience a lot of different people. And I did date a lot, but I feel like a lot of my convictions came from living in cities, living in suburbs, living in very rural communities, like putting myself in these different environments. I lived in China, like I've been all over. And from all of that, I kind of decided, okay, based on how I've experienced all of these places, this is what makes the most sense to me. This is what I want. This is how I want to build a life. This is what I want to take. This is what I want to leave out. Like all of that. I did so much of that while I was single, and it has deeply served me in my relationship. And I found a husband who did the same thing. So we're both staunchly convicted to our values, and we bring those very strong aligned values together. And guess what? There's still conflict, but it's not bad. It's not fighting. It's just the fact that we grew up in totally different ways, different states, different family dynamics, like all of that. And so we're different. So there's conflict. But because we both have such a strong conviction to our values and our vision for our life together, it makes moving through the conflict way easier. Okay. So number 4 skill that you need to learn and have and develop that will make getting into a relationship and maintaining that relationship so much easier is playfulness. Oh my gosh. If I had a nickel for every time somebody was like, oh, just wait until your relationship isn't fun anymore. Just wait till the honeymoon phase is over. Just wait until you've been married for 2 years and then, all the magic fades and you guys hate each other and like, blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh. First of all, I hate the phrase just wait. I don't care for people who interject it. I don't care for people who share it. My experience is not going to be your experience. And if I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Okay. Or I'll seek it out. But for me, I haven't experienced any of the just you wait, because my husband and I both on our own developed these 4 relationship building skills. And so we're able to bring them together, and we have a lot of fun. We probably have more fun now than we did when we were dating, because we're both better off financially. There's that security of, like when you're dating and you want to plan things and you're like, well, what if we break up? Like there's none of that. You're like, yeah, I could plan something 2 years from now. And guess what? He's still going to be around 2 years from now. So there's just that sense of lightness that exists in our relationship. And it makes our daily life so much fun. It makes conflict easier to move through again, because we can make jokes. And sometimes I get mad because when I'm really mad, then Christian will try to make a joke to like lighten the mood. And in the moment he does it, I always get so mad, but then I inevitably laugh. And then that helps me to like calm down a lot and then actually be able to talk through, whatever's going on. And that, yes, it really helps in the conflict portion, but it also helps in like, we road trip, like at least once a month, we go on a road trip. We've done actually 3, I think, cross-country road trips, just he and I in the car, 20 plus hours, and we just have fun. We are not that couple that like get sick of each other after, 10 or 12 hours in a car together and we need a break. We're just not, we're just having fun. And that's part of why I love that we both work from home. So we're together a lot. We do still take kind of individual time, but we are together a ton. And that's really easy to do because when we're together, it's really fun. And if something comes up that, is frictiony, then we can move through it together and it's easy. And it's only easy though, because we individually did and continue to develop these skills. So my professional analysis is that Rachel from The Bachelor lacked all of these skills. Probably not all of them. She could be playful, but I think that a lot of that, like, oh, well, I'm afraid that no one will choose me. That's just an indicator that she didn't know how to choose herself. She's disconnected from herself. And so if that's kind of where you're at, where you feel like no matter how great someone is that you meet, you're constantly just terrified that they're going to bail on you at any second, then that actually probably has nothing to do with them. It is very much an indicator of where you're at emotionally and how disconnected you are. So if you need help bridging the gap here or working on developing, fleshing out any of these skills, then I would be more than happy to do that. I have a dating program that I take singles through, and this is kind of at the foundation of that dating program, is helping you to develop each of these skills. We do it through an online course, and get you into a space where you have the skill set to build a healthy relationship. And then when you want to build that relationship, actually becomes within your own power, because you're not at the mercy of, well, I can't meet anyone, right? We live in a digital age. Anyone who is saying, I can't meet anyone, like, have you never heard of social media? Right? There are so many people for you to meet at any given moment. I don't want to hear that excuse. If you tell it to me, then I'm going to tell you, you need to work on these 4 skills. So I would love to do that with you. If you feel like you don't know where to start, if you feel like you tried and it's not working for you, you need more accountability, you need more guidance, you need more structure, I have a program and I would love to take you through it. I will leave a link to the application in the show notes. And I hope that this episode helps you to kind of anchor in more to who you are, what you get to have, and that this isn't all external, okay? Like getting the love that you want, being in a relationship, being happy, being fulfilled, all of that, it is not a matter of circumstance. You get to be in charge of it. And this is how you be in charge of it. You develop these skills You learn to create love in your life right now. You learn how to feel good. You learn how to feel connected. And then you find people to share that with, and you pick the one that is the most fun. That's what I did anyways. And it has turned out very well for me. We are actually about to celebrate our engagement 2 years ago, September 27th, I think. I actually don't know. But we have been together for 3 years now. And it has been a really magical ride. It has been so much fun. It has been my own version of a fairy tale. It has not been Hollywood's version. It has not been Bachelor version. It's very much been special and unique to Christian and I, and our values and what we want and what's exciting to us, and not necessarily what does the world decide is romantic. And I think that's part of why our marriage is so special and works so well, is because we're not trying to live out other people's fantasies. We decide our own, and then we make them happen. And it's super freaking fun. So I want to teach you how to do that. I want to show you what that feels like, because it's completely indescribable. And I do have 3 spots left. So just so you know, I am limiting how many people I can work with at once. And so I will be taking on 3 more dating clients. So if you feel like you need to be one of them, fill out the application, do that ASAP, because once these spots are filled, then that's actually going to be it for a year. So don't put off love for another year. You get to have it now, and I will talk to you soon.